Oh, welcome to an unusual Tuesday little Zoom from quarantine bring it in show from TrueHoop. David Thorpe, how's the weather in Florida?
I thought you were going to start by saying two for Tuesday. There's two of us.
Two
It's
for
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
old school.
Okay, two for
You don't
Tuesday.
want to ask. You really don't want to ask. Although it's a
Let's
little
do
chilly
it. Let's do
here.
it. It's freaking 11 here or something. I think it's
Is it
about 12
is
in
it?
the attic. I did a bad job of preheating the attic. So I'm literally freezing as I ask you. I'm like, let's just go. Let's bring it. How's
Is it
Florida?
really?
The 80?
I didn't know that. Is it 11 degrees?
I
Seriously?
don't know. It's cold.
It's good. It was in the 60s here. It's going to be 70 and sunny. We're going to have a good week. We've had some bad weeks. This is going to be a good week.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. It's been a good. It's going to be a good week.
That's fact. Judy says, yes, it is. So that's got to be
11.
11. I'm 111.
That was really good.
Yeah, good numerology, Randy. Okay, so a little question to open the show. Who's the best team in the NBA?
Are you asking me my opinion, or are you asking me what the odds makers are saying?
Well, I'm interested that it's very difficult to say, right? In the
I think there's a few teams that stand out.
Yeah. In the preseason, it was Nets and then Lakers,
and they're not in their group that I have.
They're in nobody's group.
Suns, Warriors, Suns, Jazz. Although the Jazz, I'm a little bit. I mean, Rudy Gobert needs to play for them to be great anyway. But I kind of lean. I think the Suns right now and the Warriors slightly ahead of Utah. Yeah, right now.
I not a gambler, but I'm pretty sure you could get crazy good odds for like Suns with the title right now. They were at the beginning of the season, they were like 8th or 9th in the list, and they just been in the finals. I'm like, I don't know what that is, but that's a discount.
Right.
So just for fun, like, and I think everybody listening to this, you're a fan of some team and you're saying, yeah, but our team has had, then you're going to fill in, COVID protocols, injuries, stars out, whatever. And you're right. But the point is just everybody's got it, man. So just for fun, I looked at the two sort of comfortable all-in-one stats to see who the top 10 teams in the NBA are. And Dunks and Threes and ESPN's BPI both have the Warriors #1 and the Jazz #2. Jazz don't even make the conversation in a lot of circles. Then we get to 3, and it's Suns and Heat. Then it starts to get really interesting. The BPI one has the Mavericks 4th. And Dunks and Threes has the Cavaliers 4th. And the Cavaliers barely make the top 10 in this other one. So what's going on there?
Well, I think you said to me before that BPI does factor in recency, right? Recent success. Are you right, do you think?
There are a few factors in there that could explain this. Another one is preseason predictions, actually. I'll tell you why they're in there if you want to talk about that. It's kind of boring, but
well, I don't think boring's our best play, but it makes sense that you.
No, let's do it. Let's go boring. Here's the deal. Like, they're trying to make a tool that takes regular season games and projects playoff success. And in that, preseason predictions actually are pretty stable, like from years past, right? So they're, LeBron's been on a bunch of teams that were pretty bad in the regular season, but then overachieved in the postseason. And preseason predictions help mitigate for that. So that's why they put it in there. But, there are going to be some of those predictions that matter not at all. But that's where I think the Cavaliers probably are suffering.
Well, that, and they've not been doing as well lately as some other teams. And Ricky Rubio's out, which doesn't involve either of these.
Yeah,
it's not projecting that. The Jazz to me is weird, and so is the Suns. I don't know why early on. To me, they were my two favorites, along with the Lakers in the West for the regular season. I think I had the Suns winning 60 games, and they're really good, and they have this interesting thing that Durant and I talked about on Friday, Henry, where they didn't extend the third-year team option to Jalen Smith, their first-round pick from 2 years ago. So he's an unrestricted free agent now, and he's doing good. And he's like 21 years old. Good. Yeah. So, but meanwhile, it's going to help him win some games this year as a backup to Aiden, just an athletic energy guy. And you and I both love that. Miami,
like this is when everyone says we should definitely pay Chris Paul, like you're not paying for everything, right? It's going to cost you something. And that's the kind of thing it probably costs you, right?
Probably. Yeah. I hadn't thought about it from that point of view, because it seemed like someone's got to take that spot. He wasn't a top 5 pick. I think the Heat, Henry, also was they're obviously top 5 in both. They have really handled COVID maybe better than anybody. With all the things they've got going on, Spoelstra has, worked his magic, and the guys just have found a way to contribute and stick together. They've had a lot of missed games, and yet they're still very good. And I know Draw was talking about Memphis. I have it in the document late. He texted me yesterday, which tells me he's really excited about those Grizzlies.
They're like 5th or 6th in these 2 lists, which was not something people.
No, I did not think. I thought they'd be good.
Yeah,
I mean, they gave Utah a run last year, and Ja was incredible, which is a big reason why we wrote about Ja in October of this year. I had forgotten about it until the other day, and here they are. They're for real.
You see, so like David very humbly goes on Twitter and says, like, boy, it occurs to me that Ja looks like Allen Iverson, but he can shoot threes. I wondered if anybody has ever said that. And then he Googled and found that he had written an article saying that. And so he started humbly. And then you see some guy replies like, if he's like Allen Iverson, but can shoot threes, he's much better than Allen Iverson, which is like, in a way, kind of the point of your story, which you didn't read. But
like, right. Read the story. Yeah. Oh yeah. Ja, I know we'll get to him at some point, but they're just, I mean, they're solid. I think I'm looking at your list now. It's hard to really evaluate Milwaukee in a negative light, Henry, because they just don't have all their guys all the time. Giannis has been playing. Drew Holiday is having an all-star caliber year, maybe his best season. He's not been playing a lot lately. They've definitely been kind of trending down. I still think them and the Nets come crunch time will be like, I just think we'll have different conversations as we head into April with those 2 teams. And the Nets aren't even on your list here.
Yeah, that's a problem, right? I think that's actually kind of the point is, the Bulls were in the conversation, but not on either list right now, really.
The Bulls are 7 on dunks and threes.
Yeah, and they're 19th, and which puts you not in the conversation for the title, right?
Oh, yeah. I don't think they're contenders. Do you think the Bulls are contenders? I think they've got defensive problems that they can't be solved with absent a trade. Yeah. And I think it's going to hurt them a lot in the postseason. Nonetheless, can they win a series? Sure. And assuming DeRozan doesn't fall off a cliff after his great season this year, they're going to be better next year. They just got to solve that defensive problem. With Vucevic at the 5, they've got to get more help around him because they're not going to get rim protection from him. Because
Kobe's arms are short, I think is what you were saying earlier.
Kobe White is becoming a key player for them at guard. Yeah. I really am impressed with his improvement, but I think he rates on dunks and threes as one of the worst defenders in the league. And I don't know that it's easily solved because he's always going to be short and slight and short-armed. I think he's short-armed. He plays like he is. And it's not like Zach LaVine's a great defender. DeMar DeRozan's not a great defender. And here's Vooch at the 5. I just think that's problematic as a collective, as a collection. But they're going to be really good on offense in the postseason. I'll tell you that. They've got some shot makers.
So the Bucks are 8th in both lists. And then just amazingly, around this part of the list, doesn't really matter exactly where, Hornets, T-Wolves, and Raptors make appearances. It feels like we're well out of the zone of contention, though, with those teams. You agree?
Agreed.
Yeah.
I would say none of those teams have a shot to contend this year. Toronto, if they do a big deal, Siakam is starting to play like an all-NBA player. Barnes is an incredible rookie, still a rookie. Fred VanVleet's a definite all-star, maybe not a starter, maybe a starter, though. He and Trae Young they could battle for that top spot at the point guard in terms of what they earn, not from fan voting. And if they could get they can't really play a center and trust it anymore. So they have to try these newfangled, everyone's really tall and long and mildly good dribbling the ball. Siakam's like their de facto backup point guard when VanVleet is out. So maybe with one more guy, they could do it, but probably not. The other one's definitely not.
So this was what really strikes me as crazy as like none of the preseason contenders exist in these rankings based on just how have you played this year, right? We do have the Warriors, I guess, established as real contenders. The Jazz, similarly, the Suns are up there. Yeah. Are the Heat real contenders?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So are the Cavaliers?
No. Well, especially now with Rubio. But even without Rubio, I don't think they had a chance to win the East. They're interesting and they're fun. They're exciting in the future.
So we got 4 teams plus a bunch of teams that are like, well, they're gonna have to be way better. Like, like you said about the Bucks, or we'd say about the Lakers or the Nets, right? It's like this isn't doing it. This isn't how you contend.
Well, at least we can argue the Nets, and it makes sense. I don't know how you argue the Lakers. As interesting as the LeBron at 5 is, and we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
I don't see how with Davis back, this rotation contends with what's out west.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Golden State is dizzying to watch, and maybe not be I know they're playing like the best team in the West. I still think it's the Suns and Utah right there, but Golden State is really just a breath of fresh air. They won with Durant and Curry with talent and the system, and they're doing it again with a little less talent, but the system is just even better. And they play the right way. They're a hard team to beat. And Curry's not even playing great. Just wait. He may come around a little bit.
As long as we're talking about the Warriors, how does Klay really change them?
So before we do that, can I quickly talk about did you watch the game at all, Henry?
When you say the game, can you be more specific?
His return.
Oh, I did watch quite a lot of that game.
Henry, it was I can be very sappy when it comes to a lot of things, but when it comes to live games itself, I kind of click on the work hat. I just watched as an angry, jaded old man probably, but I was, first of all, if they didn't start Klay, I might have protested.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of that. Proud is the wrong word. I respect that they started him. He's earned that. And I don't think anyone on the team should complain, but just Henry, the fact I had the volume off until the game actually started. I didn't know Draymond wasn't going to play.
Right.
So I was surprised when Draymond went and fouled me. I'm like, what is going on here? Why did they foul him? I thought maybe someone had died or something. They were honoring that. And it just that he wanted to start the game. Klay came back. And then Draymond was Mr. Cheerleader. Like, you would never know he can be surly and angry. Mm-hmm. He was just so loving the whole time. And then when Klay made the first shot, you see Steve Kerr say after the game, okay, the first play they ran was not for Klay to shoot. It was for something to happen that involved Klay. But Steve Kerr laughingly said after the game, Klay knew he was going to shoot that bitch. So he attacked and threw in a shot. And I'm just telling you, that is a really hard shot to make for anyone on the planet. He just made it like it was nothing. And then the way the fans reacted and Curry's excitement, running on the court at one point, it was a beautiful thing. I was so
what
happy.
About that? Explain to me that slow-mo drive. Like he got that dunk after beating 2 guys off the dribble, but it all seemed to happen like half the speed of Kyrie Irving would have done that, but somehow it just worked beautifully anyway.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, he had Jared Allen, who's no slouch on defense, one in isolation, and he did a little hesitation right-left crossover. I don't know that he realized there was no help inside, but I do know he realized, well, I don't think Mobley was in the game. Maybe I'm wrong, but if Allen's on me, that's one less guy I have to worry about at the rim if I can beat him at the point of attack out behind the 3. And again, it's just there's not a lot of pure shooters that can do that anytime, much less after almost 3 seasons off. So super impressive. It shows a lot about the talent he has. And I've never been a huge Klay fan. He's had to earn it because he used to really not play defense for a while, and he wasn't very efficient. He hasn't played defense for years when he was back playing. And so this goes to the question you just asked me. What does it mean going forward? Well, here's what it means. It means that in the postseason, if he does what he's done the previous postseason that he's played, they've got 2 predator wing defenders with Wiggins and Klay. That has value. That really has value. If you can have 2 of those guys, which means one will always be in the game, which means whoever it is you're trying to beat in the regulars in the postseason in the West, and then potentially against someone like a Giannis or Jimmy Butler, whatever, you've got 2 elite level defenders postseason wise. And he just knows how to play and is shooting. And it means Jordan Poole can come off the bench. So now they've got a 6th man of the year candidate immediately. Yeah, it's a big deal. If he stays healthy, which we all hope he does, it's a big deal for them.
Jordan Poole's been excellent, though, and it does definitely reduce his minutes and touches, and that isn't necessarily a good thing in and of itself.
Yeah, they've got to. I mean, he's come off the bench before, and then he was starting. Now he's got to come off the bench again. but he's trying to win a championship. It should be an easy sell for them, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So we got a bunch to cover. Last night, the Mavericks beat the Bulls in a match with two of the hottest teams in the league. And I was shocked to learn in the post-game Twitter that it was Luka's longest winning streak is right now at 6 games.
That's weird. But listen, great teams tend to play great. Good teams tend to play good. He's just had a good team in the past. They've not been great. And so they've just never been able to continue to win. And I don't think he's played in those 6 straight wins. Has he played in all 6 of them?
Oh, that sounds like a quiz.
I know. I'm not sure. I don't think he has. They're playing defense now.
Yeah.
They're number 1 in the league last 15 games. They're number 1 in opponent second chance points the last maybe 10 or 15, and they're top 10 in points in the paint in the last 15 games. They're basically shutting people down in the paint. And this is where I think we get confused as an entity, as a large community with a 3-point shot. We think that is what dictates your defense. But the Lakers a couple of years ago really established a dominance in the paint. They weren't number 1 in points in the paint defensively. The Lakers weren't. I mean, number 1 in block shots, but they were top 10. There was an identity. And I think that I don't know how, I have not studied it yet. Maybe it's something I'll do soon. They're starting to protect the paint better. And that's a big step forward for their defense, which I know Jason Kidd is really stressing.
My source is Devin, and the news is that Luka's played in 4 of those 6 games.
That's what I thought. Yeah. So still, that's good. That's good that they've won 2 without him. And he's not been great. He's still turning the ball over some. They beat the Bulls 2 nights ago. I think it was Sunday night, and he was very good. He turns the ball over too much still, but he was very good. He triple-double. Winning and losing are like snowballs. When you get going, it just everything feels better or worse if you're about to crash. And we'll see how they handle the trade season now with a month to go. We're 1 day less than a month to go for the trade deadline. They seem to be a team that will try to do a deal, wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what they can do, but
I mean, they just changed everything, right? They've changed the coach and the GM, and
yeah,
they obviously want to solve the Rubik's Cube here a little bit, right? And they're not that close, I guess.
Porzingis has been good this year too. I think metrically his numbers are really good.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that he's going to be the postseason player they need him to be. I'm not convinced they'll get out of a playoff series, which they've never done in Luka's career. The West is good and deep.
Yeah.
I mean, in theory, couldn't they be a 4 or 5 team with I don't know, Memphis? If Utah and Phoenix are 2-3 with Golden State, that could be 4 or 5. It means one of those teams doesn't get out of the first round. And that's not including any other team like a Lakers that could come around,
I think that they have Luka's prime is upon us, and they got to figure out how they're going to get him a championship. And do they have any players who?
Jalen Brunson's good, but he's good. So, trading him, how much better are you going to get when you're losing him? It's not like they have that really interesting young player. Dorian Finney-Smith, I believe, is having a good year in terms of metrics. But again, you're losing starters or key players. Getting it, you got to get back something even that much better. Normally, you have to include draft picks and such, but how valuable are those? So, I think it's gonna be hard.
Well, and if you the conundrum is to make a move to get significantly better that doesn't get you to contending. Those are exactly the moves that keep you from ever contending. Right?
I completely agree.
As a Blazer fan, right? Everything, the picks to get Robert Covington are exactly the reason that Lillard will probably have to leave Portland to win a championship, right? Bummer, right? The problem is that you weren't patient before, right? It's just always how it goes. But
I'll finish with this on Dallas. Luka's the closest thing we've ever had to LeBron at that age. I don't mean how he plays in terms of the way his impact and everything. Well, we know what LeBron did later in his career, but he also got Cleveland at 1 finals when they got swept by the Spurs in his first finals before he went to Miami. So I mean, it's not a terrible decision, Henry, if they just decided, let's be a top 5 defensive team. Let's really go all in on that. And let's hope Luka's a miracle worker. And let's see what that gets us this year once we get to be consistently that top 5 defensive team. They've not done that before.
That's a plan. That's at least
he's still young.
Yeah.
You to your point, you said he's in his prime. He got in the league in his prime. There's not many 19-year-olds that you can say that. He's got a long prime, is my point. So they don't have many options anyway. So let's get to be as best we can be as is, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
I guess.
You shared a really uplifting tweet with us about experts projecting that more than half of Europe will be infected with the coronavirus in the next 6 to 8 weeks. WHO warned on Tuesday amid a new west to east tidal wave sweeping across the region.
Well, we seem to follow them. We as an America seems to follow Europe, what was happening in Europe with COVID. Right now, we're getting record hospitalization rates, and I think our death rates are starting to grow. A lot of people are predicting we're going to hit our peak in the next 10 days. And it makes sense to me. We've said for a month now, this is going to rage through America. But that kind of worried me a little bit, because if we're 3 weeks behind them and now we're in February, that's when the All-Star game is. That's not great. It's in a cold weather city like Cleveland. Everything's going to be going on indoors. I'm not sure that's great. I'm quite sure that isn't great, actually.
Wait, is this a sneaky last minute pitch to move the All-Star game to Florida?
Oh, I have no interest in that at all.
Yeah.
It could be across the street. I wouldn't be going.
They did, I guess there was news in December that the NBA billionaires had gotten together and basically directed the league not to cancel games for COVID. And they've been very good at that. They've canceled nothing. They've rescheduled some, but and that struck me as a hard-hearted position to take at the time. But then last night, also Sunday, Kevin Durant plays at noon on national TV, and then he's an older player recovering from an Achilles injury. Then has to fly across the country and play last night in Portland, a rare East Coast to West Coast back to back. And I was like, man, you guys are lucky you didn't break him, right? This is not a good, there's nobody who knows about injuries who would say that's healthy for an athletic body to go, he has to go through. Did you happen to watch any of that game?
The game yesterday, the Brooklyn game?
Yeah, Brooklyn, Portland.
I did.
So, well, what'd you see there?
I didn't see anything that was all that interesting. My issue with Brooklyn is issue is the wrong word, but when I get concerned about Brooklyn, it stems from a lack of athletic energy.
Mm-hmm.
And when they don't have that, they just have to strictly rely on the incredible talents of Harden, Durant, and Kyrie. When they bring athletic energy, which they do sometimes, over the course of 48 minutes more than others, they're very good. And KD is cheat code. But yeah, and of course I knew they had played the day before. I hadn't even thought about it so much initially, but we call those scheduling losses, don't we?
Well, yeah. But so this was a COVID makeup game. It was a rescheduled game, and it sets up both teams to have a terrible week, right? They're going into big, long, busy road trips with an extra game, right? When what would have been an off day. I was like, man, it's a non-conference matchup between the 16th and 26th ranked teams in BPI. There's an unvaccinated guy playing in the middle of Omicron. Obviously, no one plays in masks. Lots of unmasked people in the arena. 3,000 reported empty seats. It looked like more to me on TV. Both teams on back-to-backs. The Blazers have to avoid the lottery to keep their first-round pick. That might dampen your motivation a little bit. And then now they're heading off on these road trips. I'm like, this is if you think about the NBA as a business, like your local restaurant or coffee shop or whatever, under what conditions do you just close? On what conditions do you just take the L, right? It just seems like a very cancelable game. It doesn't really matter. And I just wondered, there's some amount of money that somebody has projected they'll be lost if they canceled.
Well, but I would argue, but I would argue this, Henry. I'm not arguing you. I'm just arguing this point. We've already seen this happen now a ton of times in this year, where teams just had to play their two-way guys and their deep bench. So play them. Don't play KD. I mean, you can play Kyrie. He hasn't played much. And if you lose, you lose. But in a sense, you win because you're getting these guys a chance to play and evaluating them. Every time you see them play, you have a chance to project them a little bit more accurately, while at the same time giving them the fundamental foundation they need to build their careers. You've got to get on the court to play. And so again, we talked about Spoelstra in Miami. They found some two-way guys and some deep rotation guys that have turned out to be helpful.
And in their defense, like Harden sat, and David Duke had to sit with foul trouble. He played so much, right? Like, they're doing some of that, but it still feels like if I run if I own a restaurant and you're the manager, it's like, yeah, you as the manager can make a workaround to terrible situation I created, but I still created a terrible situation, right? Like,
I'm not arguing that.
This is a very poorly run restaurant now, right? Like, we're not really vaccinating in an organized way. We're not really doing the masks. I guess they're testing a lot, but
I mean, I've seen players wear masks a lot. In fact, for the very first time, this is incredible. And I'll think in a minute who it was. I saw a player check in wearing the mask.
That happened yesterday. Dennis Smith Jr. did it yesterday.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
I've not seen anyone do that.
And he forgot.
Watched it live.
He was like, oh.
I was so happy. I wasn't mad at him at all for that. I don't love it when they check in with their sweats on because they're used to that.
Right.
But he's not played a ton. I was so glad he had a mask on. I'm like, yeah, you go.
I mean, he wore a mask. Like, yeah, but they play the game without masks though, right? I mean, this is an unmasked business, right? Like you're running a restaurant where everybody runs around and leans on each other without masks on. Like, and one of them's unvaccinated, at least one, right? Like,
right. Well, he doesn't seem to care.
Right. But but think of it as a restaurant terms, right? Like my kids work at a restaurant, right? It's like, oh, you're going to go work with the person who doesn't wear a mask and isn't vaccinated? Like, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, that is like, people have to guard Kyrie Irving, right? Yeah. Like, it's just no one can tell me that that's safe, right? Like, it's with Omicron. Maybe before they had some allegations that like basketball was kind of sort of safe and the filters in the building or whatever, but like, that's not possibly true now, right? So let's go to the All-Star game.
In Cleveland.
Well,
there's a pandemic raging in Europe again. Yeah.
All right. Then another game was the Pistons, easily one of the worst teams in the league, beat the Jazz, easily one of the best. I pointed out that Sadiq Bey, Cade Cunningham, Corey Joseph all shot really well. They scored 28 points on 23-point attempts, etc. You pointed out that the Jazz just aren't good without Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, yours was more insightful than mine. I think we all know that at this point. Rudy again, I think he might be the best defensive player of all time, Rudy Gobert, certainly of modern times. And Hassan Whiteside is no Rudy Gobert. He just isn't. And but I did watch all of Cade Cunningham's buckets. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he's the third best. Franz Wagner has been very good for Orlando. So Cade and Wagner are competing for the third best rookie this year. They still have plenty of time to catch Barnes. I'm not sure anyone's catching Mobley. He's fucking amazing. But Barnes is really great too. But Cunningham was good and aggressive. He still shoots the ball too low in his body. I think he's easier contested than people are recognizing, but he's good. He's a good defensive player. They have a solid foundation in him. I don't know if he's MVP like they hope, but he's going to be very good. Sadiq Bey, I'm not convinced he's going to be a long-term answer. I'm not sure Detroit. They still have some work to do. Killian Hayes, okay. He's a point guard they drafted in the lottery a year before. They've got to trade Jeremy Grant, and they've got to try to get a couple firsts maybe for him. They might get it. I'm not sure they will.
I'm sure they're going to end up trading with the Blazers and it'll end up being terrible for the Blazers. I can feel in my bones that's what's going to happen. I don't know how, but
You're right. You might be right.
That's the kind of sort of on the downslope player that you go all in for when you're trying to keep Damian. I think that's the kind of thing that happens.
I don't know that Portland, though. I don't know that they can trade anyone till 2026 in the first round. Devin can check on that, but for some reason in my brain somewhere, it's Portland can't trade a first round pick till 2026.
Could be.
And that doesn't make a lot of sense for Detroit. So you might be safe because of it.
Now Bol Bol is on that team. Does that make any difference for them?
Yeah, I don't know, probably not, but he is intriguing, and it's never really happened for him in Denver, which wasn't a surprise to me. But I don't know that Denver is so great at developing players. Maybe, I mean, obviously Jokic is amazing. They've done a good job with a few other guys for sure. Michael Porter Jr. being another one, and a few others beyond that. But Detroit has no choice but to develop him, and see if he can't do it there. Not to say they're great at developing, but he's not going to lose a bunch of minutes to veterans, especially after they trade Jeremy Grant. I'm rooting for him. He is, he's just a fun player to root for. I'm hoping that we see some kind of traction for him. Otherwise, he's going to go overseas, I think.
I guess if you get 5 players of his age and potential, you end up with somebody really good.
Yeah, a couple of guys that can work out. Yeah. He's intriguing.
Yeah. Okay. Did you happen to see this chart?
I did.
Yeah, super good. Basically, of all the players who've been on 10-day contracts this year, how many of them have made it to full contracts? We were talking about this, and I was thinking we should chase it all down, but Judy's now showing it. Do you mind showing the chart? There we go. So, well, all these players, David. Who do you like here?
Well, as you know, I have a real relationship with Alfonso McKinney, and I've become very fond of him. He's a delightful young man who's 29, and he took advantage of his time with the Bulls and earned a spot. I think the Biyombo story is pretty interesting. He's made a difference, and all these two-way guys, I don't know if they'll come. Lance Stevenson doesn't really do it for me. I don't know about you, but not a fan. Never have been a fan.
Mm-hmm.
McKinney's not playing right now in the Bulls rotation because he got COVID when he signed his deal. But of 110 players who have done 10-day contracts, there's 110 10-day contracts, not 110 total players. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, yeah. I don't know how many total players have signed 10 days, but only 3 have signed standard deals now. It's still, these teams are reticent, partly because they have so many guaranteed deals already, which is why a lot of teams don't like starting the season with more than 13 guaranteed deals, even though they can have 15 plus 2 two-ways. A lot of teams like to do less than that so they can have some flexibility and not have to cut someone. McKinney's the only guy playing on a team in Chicago that really, I think he'll end up being in the rotation when it's in, because they need a big wing defender. As we were just talking about the Bulls, they don't really have that. And I think they need that. Maybe Troy Brown, people would think, is that guy. I'm not convinced he is. I think Alfonso McKinney can be that guy for the Bulls.
I just wish we had a pretty chart like this for every complicated thing that happens in the NBA.
Oh, I agree. I was talking to Gerard, I think, on Friday about the chart of the faces of all the players who would lead the league in scoring from all the spots on the court in the last 20 years. And Damian Lillard is on above the break threes, and Ray Allen's in the corners, and Dirk is everywhere in the mid range, and Shaq is in the rim. It's awesome. It's just a great illustrative way to see, who's dominating all the points, all the zones of scoring.
It's funny, that kind of chart has, really from our friend Kurt, has become a big factor of how we express advanced stats. But I'm never sure what you do with it. If I coach that player, am I supposed to just send him to that spot? Do I already? No.
No, I think it tells a historical story. It's a great question you ask. Yeah, there's now, if you want to do that for your upcoming scouting report, actually, Henry, you just had a fucking great idea. Maybe it's something teams should use, not necessarily either of these 2 particular kinds of stories, but maybe there is a better way to do scouting reports illustratively.
He worked for the Spurs for a couple of years.
I wonder if he did that. I wonder if he did.
I'm sure they did that.
We should find out, because
he's a cartographer. That's, you know what I mean? It'd be weird to hire him and not do that. Yeah.
I really think, listen, all players learn differently. It'd be wise probably to do scouting reports illustratively and then graphically, as well as just having pure numbers. Some players just give them the numbers. They can see it all in their heads.
But here's my thing. Theoretical question for you, an expert in these things. Does it matter where I am on the court? But this, I mean, like, I know that I'm accustomed to practicing, like a free throw is from the same spot and that helps me make the free throw. But if I shot it that exact same way, a foot to the left, a foot to the right, it's going in at exactly the same rate, right? Like if you defend the hell out of me in a certain spot, that's a hard spot for me to score from, right? Like it doesn't make it magic. I won't go in because I was standing where I have made the shots before, will it?
I mean, you're getting into some deep stuff. There's a confidence issue. Like I've coached players that one of my favorite players ever, you would run to the corner and he would yell sweet spot. And now this is practice, not a game, but he seemed like he made those sweet spot shots all the damn time.
Right.
But more significantly, as you're preparing to guard these guys, if there's a player that just struggles from like above the break three, but is great from the corner, well, yeah, let him shoot the above the break three and take away that corner three. I don't think that's necessarily what you were saying. And there are some guys who just aren't very good at finishing at the rim. And you should have the opposite kind of chart that we're seeing. Here's the faces of the guys in the areas where they're not very good. Don't guard them there, right? And don't foul them. That's what really drives me crazy. When you foul someone that just isn't going to make that shot, most likely or commonly. Yeah. I
think mostly you're like Dirk's dominating that mid-range area because you can't stop him there.
Exactly right. Same
as people forgot about him.
That's right.
I mean?
Like, to me, that's why these stories are better, just as an understanding of who was really good from those areas back then. Yeah, this cat.
It's like kind of a curio. I'm sure I'm wrong. I'm sure that there's a way to like have someone explain how you use that chart that makes a real difference. Or I guess the other thing I might tell you is like, hey, look, when Dirk puts the ball on the floor going here, he wants to get there, right? Like it might give you a little trick as to like where he's headed, right?
Tim Duncan wanted to get to that middle. He wanted to get to that middle, and you were stupid to let him get to the middle.
Right. Okay. Oh, this is for you, Devin. David put in the document, Super Jaw, the John Morant block of all blocks. I imagine everything has been said about it, but let's just do it. Let's do it again. Do you mind showing?
I did not see it live either. I just turned it off. And they're calling it the block play of the year. But what I want to point out is, and Judah, you can keep playing it. I mean, he only didn't catch the ball with two hands above the square because the backboard knocked it out of his hands.
Yeah.
He was up so high, but Avery Bradley doesn't see him coming.
Yeah.
And as I've said to you many times, when I just wrote this last week, when I first read that Hubie Brown said, you set screens for one reason, to make defenders think, my first thought was that's the smartest basketball thing I ever heard. But I also challenged myself to come up with one. Like, I want to come up with something that people think is super smart. It took me a long time. But my thing is, you don't block the shot of the guy that sees you coming, you block the shot of the guy that doesn't. You're happy to live with a good contest for the one that sees you coming, and just make him try to take a tough shot. Trying to block it means you're likely to foul or more likely to foul. Here's a great example of a 6'2" or 6'3" guy blocking the shot of Avery Bradley, who didn't see him coming. And it's also a testament to the hustle. Now, if you didn't see the beginning of that play, Henry, he turned it over. Ja did. And this is even your terrible high school coach may have taught you this, or middle school coach. I know mine did. If you turn it over, don't spend 1 millisecond lamenting the mistake. Get it back on defense. That's what you're taught. Get it back on defense. Well, that's what it looks like. When you turn the ball over, that's what it looks like to get it back on defense, because that's exactly what John did. He has raised he's not a great defender yet. He's significantly better while becoming a top 5% or so offensive player. He's in the MVP conversation right now. Yeah. And is going to be for quite some time.
The first thing I saw about that play was on Twitter. Shea Serrano had a reverse angle still image of it. And he said something like, what or whatever. And I literally, my 100% of my being was like, oh, it's a Photoshop. It just looks exactly like a video game, or just, it doesn't, how much basketball have we watched? Like, you just don't see that dude up there. Like, it's just, he was
not above the square, not above the square like that in a game, and not just a drill.
Yeah.
He does something where he loves, I told this to Durant on Friday, he loves to drive and absorb the contact and then finish on the way down. And he's not unique. Jordan was amazing at that. All athletes can do it. He's a slight guy and does it so well. He's not weak. because it takes strength to finish as you're falling after absorbing the contact. He's not alone though in what he's doing for Memphis. We'll get to that when Durant comes on, but he's carrying the team right now. And what's interesting about it is they went on the win streak early, or just recently. He wasn't playing, and then he came back and they lost. And it's almost like he's like, okay, like I've got to do more. And now they're doing both. Whatever else playing well and Ja's MVP level Ja, and all of a sudden people are pretty freaking happy in Memphis.
It looks good. All right, we got some. Let's speed through a few topics here, and we get Drew out here. You're talking about a lot of superstars. Bradley Beal, Damian Lillard, Ben Simmons are in suboptimal situations that could have easily been avoided.
Yeah, just very quickly. Obviously, we know the Ben thing. Beal is not playing well on a team that is now bottom 10 on offense and defense after a good start. What does he do there? Does someone offer him the full deal? Does he want to stay in Washington, get the extra year? We have a situation with Dame where he wanted to leave. They didn't want him to leave. Now they're not any good and he wants to stay, but it makes no sense for him to stay. Like all these things could have been avoided. I mean, not to say that the Wizards didn't try to trade Beal. I don't know. The Sixers situation, the Dame situation is kind of a mess. And I didn't even mention the Zion situation, although I'm not sure that could have been avoided. That's why I didn't mention it. These are 4 brand names. If you throw Zion in, Zion's not playing, Dame's not playing, Simmons isn't playing, Beal is playing at 28% from 3, although he's playing better lately. The NBA needs to you wrote this last week on Twitter. The top 75 sporting events televised, I believe, in 2021 did not include a single NBA event. Well, there's 4 superstars all in suboptimal situations. That's not a good thing for the league.
Not a good thing. And then there's a story about the 76ers reportedly trying to include Tobias Harris in Ben Simmons trades. And
yeah, I wanted your opinion on this. Brian Windhorst, and I think someone else wrote a story about it. 2 different people, and they kind of credit each other as saying they did it. Well, of course, the Sixers would love to trade Tobias Harris. They owe him a ton of money in the next 3 years, and but they can want all they want. Who wants Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons and spend between the 2 of them $70+ million a year, and they play basically the same position? They don't play similarly. My gut instinct was: is this an agent? Is this a team planting? How is this news? Why is it being written about? I don't typically criticize journalists, but it just seemed weird to me because Tobias is trending down, and they're paying him like he's an all-star, and he's not. Of course, they would love to trade him. How is that news?
Yeah, we can't be so naive as sports fans, right? Like the idea is that things are happening in secret and journalists are just like hearing it and then reporting it for the good of us readers, right? And that has happened in the past. It occasionally happens, but much, 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 much more common. And particularly much more common in Daryl Morey situations is they discuss amongst themselves, how can the media help us here? Right? And so you make public the things that help you. So in this case, what he's made public again and again is that Sixers are demanding a very high price. Well, why that? Because that makes it easier for the GM in Atlanta or Golden State or Portland to justify on some date the month from now why they gave up a ton. Because everybody's being taught that Ben Simmons is very, very expensive and the Sixers want to keep him, which I don't believe for a second, but it just helps Daryl justify the price he wants, right? And this same thing, right? Makes perfect sense. Well, actually, the other thing I noticed is a lot of the players that they could get who would be helpful can't play with Tobias, right? It's like they need to also trade Tobias too, right? Seems like. Anyway, yeah, it's just I would assume everything leaked from Daryl Morey, or frankly, most teams, was leaked not by accident, but to help the leverage, right? Sorry,
yeah, politicians do the same thing all the time too.
Yeah. That's what politics is.
Yeah.
All right, you're a little excited about Malik Monk. Good Lakers.
Yeah, we've talked about the Lakers. He's averaging 20 a game his last 8 appearances. The Lakers are playing LeBron at 5, and he's fucking ridiculously good. This guy who came in the league as a 1, despite being, a 6'9" big man. He was a point guard at first, and now he's playing center, and he won't play there when AD comes back. But Malik's last 8 games, he's got a lot of 20-point games. If they have any shot, they needed guys like him and Nunn to do better. And at least now Malik is doing that. We'll see when AD gets back. It might be too little too late. But when you have LeBron at 5 and the court's more open, Westbrook's playing much, much, much better. The lane's more open for him. And so, yeah, we gotta keep our eye on it a little bit to see if they can make a move.
It's like they're trying to start a fire. We got a little piece of kindling and a little something happening there.
Right.
I think you are taking a little NBA inspiration from Georgia, which I think is a college football reference. I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, so Georgia finally, I don't care about Georgia. I went to Florida. They're arch rivals, but they had lost Alabama 4 straight times in either the championship game or the SEC championship game. And their head coach had been a longtime assistant for the head coach of Alabama, who's the best coach of all time now in college football, maybe college sports, him and John Wooden maybe. But they won. Now, there was some injuries that occurred, whatever. You don't got to apologize for winning. They won, and they won convincingly in the fourth quarter. And it made me think of all teams right now, the Raptors, who Siakam is starting to play like an all-league player, Van Vliet, all-star player. Just keep knocking on the door, guys. Now's not the time to say, okay, let's trade those guys while we have high value and rebuild. Toronto was, I think, 20-17. And that was with Siakam missing a lot of the year to start and then coming back and not being very good. And now he's fucking really good. They might, Georgia, just hang around, keep giving yourself a chance to win. And then when you can go all in 1 year, boom, like they did with Kawhi, I'd like to see teams try to just hang around and not think we got to do all these moves for 1 year only. Toronto had to trade DeRozan anyway, and it worked out. But be relevant, be right there. Not necessarily as good as Georgia's been, but close enough, and give yourself a chance. Give luck a chance to happen with the deal or a young player that suddenly plays great. I think teams are too quick to. They want, okay, we're good, we're not great, and let's cut it all. Let's start over again. I don't want to do that. Keep trying to develop your young players. Anunoby's doing better, and we already talked about Barnes and Van Vliet, and see what happens.
That's much better advice if you're young, though, right?
Yeah, don't do it when you're super old now.
Yeah. Do the Celtics count?
Yeah, I mean, those guys are still. I think they're 25 and under, Tatum and Brown.
Yeah,
I think Brown's 24. So yeah, they're a team that I wouldn't quit on them just yet if I was Boston.
Gerard Hector, are you available? There he is.
I wanted Gerard to see this play. The plus this 50 seconds, Judy. This is post game. And the guy who tweeted this, I just realized, is like my son. I coached when he was 14 years old. He coached my son years later. So this is the post-game press conference here with Alabama.
Bill, thanks for your time. We'll let you head back to your locker room.
Thank you so much. Hazel, stay there.
I'd like to say something.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
These two guys that are sitting up here, they're not defined by one game. These guys played great for us all year. They're great competitors. They were great leaders on this team, and they contributed tremendously to the success of this team, and we would not be here without them. All right, and both of them take responsibility for the loss, but both of them contributed in a lot of ways in a positive way to giving us a chance to win and a chance to be here to have an opportunity to win. So I just want to thank them for that and let everybody know how proud I am of these two guys.
Keep watching this. Keep watching. As they get up, watch what these guys do. Thank you very much. And touch them.
Bryce
That's
and
what I
Will,
wanted to
thanks
show.
for your
Thank you, Judy. I've told you guys years before, I saw Calipari do the same kind of thing with his whole team when he had that amazing UMass team. Marcus Camby made the Final Four when no one from the A-10 was going to the Final Four, and everyone had to touch each other every time they huddled. It was so cool. Alabama wins a lot of games because they recruit the best players and all of that, but they do all the little things too, and it shouldn't stop in college. The NBA cultures that have that kind of love. Tim Duncan did it all the time. Google Tim Duncan putting his hand, and he's got hands on players' heads and shoulders all the time. I think that shit matters. So I just wanted to point that out.
That's your kind of jam, coach. You love that feel good stuff.
Yeah.
Nick Saban's a snake oil salesman, so I don't, anything he says.
I'm not a
I'm
fan of
always
Nick
like,
Saban.
whatever.
I'm not a fan of Nick Saban. I actually know some stories way back with Michigan State, but I can't argue with. He's a changed man, by the way. That is not the old Nick Saban. He used to win differently before. They are a different group now. And our friend Steve Schembaum, like he hires Steve to go speak to them. The old Nick Saban would have done that shit. He was, I couldn't stand him, but he's preaching the right things now. Yeah, I think.
There was some research years ago in the early days of TrueHoop. We published about it, where basically winning teams touch each other more. And after I wrote about it, I was at the Sloan conference, and this guy comes up to me in the hallway, and he's like, I'm a researcher. I know a lot about this kind of stuff, but basically, like, it's straight Pavlovian. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, like you make a good bucket and then you get a cookie, basically, right? You subconsciously seek the bucket more. Awesome. Because it's not just a bucket, right? It's now also this person I work with loves it and makes them, and I express, like basically coaches can coach and teammates can inspire through not just their voices, right? But also just with what you just showed the video of.
Yeah.
I can believe
All
that.
right. Henry, Gerard, I told Henry, I don't typically get the text from you about a team. Let's talk about your Cubs.
Listen, these Grizzly Cubs are fantastic. How do you not love watching them play basketball? They're having so much fun. So here's the thing. They're super young, right? Average age 24 years old, which is, Henry, you need young legs to win in this league, especially in this crazy regular season. And you mentioned the thing about touching. And, a little kumbaya is for me. However.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know you were going to be so anti.
You're such a swimmer. Can't touch a swimmer.
It's not that I'm not. It's just like, I get it. It works. It's cool.
Okay,
but I thought it was interesting in the game where they were blowing out the Lakers, how LeBron was getting so angry at the Grizzlies. And I'm like, dude, they're just having fun and kicking your ass. Which you've done to many people many a time throughout your 19-year career, right?
Well, he would like them to now stop, is what he would like, all right?
And you see that with them, though, right? Like, every time a guy hits a three or the whole bench is like, oh, my God. And it's that college feel, right? And it's nice. And I texted coach, and I was like, all right, I'm feeling good. Because, my thought was they get to the playoffs this year and get their ass kicked, right? That's the progression. And you get better next year. But now I'm like, shit, they could win a round and they could possibly scare a contender if they make a trade. So I got super excited.
And so Henry, I asked Gerard what trade, and we had just talked about it on Friday, but I had forgotten because I'm fucking old. And I think you had mentioned Jaylen Brown, right, for a couple of guys.
Yeah. Because first of all, I don't want to give up Bane. You know that. I'm the greedy GM. I want to give you crap for your good players. That's what I want, which is not going to work.
No.
So I don't want to give up Bane unless I'm getting Jaylen or Bradley Beal. Then fine, but not for any kind of fringy kind of dude, because this is only year 2. I don't know what Desmond Bane could be. He could be, an all-star maybe. He's really good.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but I don't think you get Jaylen Brown for.
No, the Celtics also don't want to break them up, is what we hear. That's the noise.
Gerard's trade, though, was good. It wasn't just Desmond Bane. The Grizzlies have a lot of good young players and some picks. And so the package they could put together, I don't think it was hang up the phone. Now, if the Celtics brass knows that Brown and Tatum love each other and want to stay together, then they could hang up pretty quickly. They have 2 all-stars, and you don't typically trade one. But if they know something we don't know, I don't know. It's not been reported that there maybe is acrimony between them. They can get a bunch of rotation players, a few of which Dylan Brooks they could throw in. Dylan Brooks is good. He's crazy.
You got to keep him. You got to keep him.
But I'm just saying, no. Morant, Triple J, and Brown, take that to the bank. Woo! You trade anyone else for those 3 guys.
You're cooking with gas if that's your 3. Like that's.
Yeah. I love it, but if Jaylen Brown gets hurt and Dylan Brooks is on TV stopping Steph all playoffs long, you're gonna be so pissed.
But that'd be 3 under 24 and under dudes. Again, I'm not suggesting it'll happen.
But did you see Dylan Brooks in the playoffs last year? Like he's like,
Oh,
I did.
he's wonderful. I love because he and Ja, like their spirit embodies that team, right? Dylan Brooks is the guy who's like irrational confidence, right? You know that Steph Curry, 2-time MVP, greatest shooter of all time, all that. I don't care.
yeah.
Like stopping that dude doesn't matter. Like, and he'll talk and like he won't quit for 48 minutes. And you love that. That's the kind of enthusiasm and stuff you need to get a team bought into what they've got to do. So I love Dylan Brooks.
He's like the little Draymond Green.
Yeah.
Little bit.
Yeah.
In the Harry Potter movies, I don't know much about it, but I guess each person has some kind, I forget the name of it. It was the ghost spirit of them, whatever it was, and everyone had their own kind of thing.
Horcrux?
No, not a Horcrux. No,
What's a Horcrux?
Look at him, not a Horcrux.
No, I used to know what it is. My daughter would know. In the NBA, it's almost like a saying. Draymond Green and Dylan Brooks, their saying is "fuck everyone."
Mhm.
Patronus. That's what it is.
Patronus.
Patronus. There you go. Fuck everyone. Like Dylan Brooks plays like fuck all you
Yeah.
motherfuckers. Nobody can stop me. John Morant's pretty good, but in Dylan Brooks' mind, he's the second best player on the team. He's the best in Dylan's mind.
Mhm.
And it works for him. It plays for him. Jordan Clarkson does a similar kind of thing, and it works for him. But if they can add Jaylen Brown to those two other dudes, because Jaren Jackson Jr. is coming also. And by the way, he can't shoot still. That's what people don't realize. He's really coming as a player, but his shooting skills have not developed yet. But he's still can he drink legally? If so, barely.
Barely. Just turned 21. Barely.
He's starting to learn how to dominate games defensively. He's getting better as a rebounder. He's not there yet. I still think his upside is enormous. So
Coach, he's guarding without fouling, and over the weekend he had 11 blocks in 2 games. Like he's protecting the paint. Like he's telling you, it's if he can be what we think he can be, and Ja's that All NBA dude. As I said, I texted you, they're a 50+ win team, and they're a contender every year. Right? That's the dream. That's what you hope you get when you draft in the lottery year after year. That's what you hope, and they got potentially 2 guys.
They're both All NBA potential for sure.
Well, and you have 4 players who are similar in age and absolute murderers. Like, why do we have to make a trade again?
Well, you don't have to, right? It's just that idea of like what Daryl always says, right? If you think you got a 5% chance, you go all in, right? So if you think, man, if we just get one, because my fear for them is in the playoffs, you need that wing, as I always say, these wings that everyone wants that don't grow on trees, right?
Yeah.
I need a wing. Who's their wing? That's all right. I'm going to give you 25+ and I can switch on everybody. Like, who is that? Now, not many teams have that, but can you get someone like that?
They're running a sale on Robert Covington's right now.
I think
Rocco was good last night.
He was. It's a great time to buy. Yeah.
I think Jaylen Brown averaged like 20 a game in his second year in the postseason when they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and he's made it twice. He's better than Desmond Bane. I like Desmond Bane. Bane unlikely ever becomes who Jaylen Brown already has been. Desmond Bane's good, but Jaylen Brown's a really great player. Yeah.
Desmond Bane built like a linebacker, man.
Oh,
like, he's just like, I'm like, why are you so solid? Like you're playing the wrong sport, I think.
He's a better PJ Tucker for that age.
Yeah.
Just a big, strong fucking man that can really shoot, but he can play. PJ can shoot in one spot. I don't think Desmond's the defender PJ became, but he's how young is Desmond Bane? He's in his early 20s.
23.
Yeah, he's gonna get better. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe his second game in the league. Someone help me out here. He had a really good shooting game. And I remember saying, like, what is this like football player? Yeah. Like
he's short arm too.
Everybody out of his way and can shoot too. He did that game. I was just like, keep that guy.
Yeah. They're well coached.
Kleiman, yeah. And Taylor Jenkins, young guy, gotten really good as a coach, and their front office has done really well picking up guys.
I agree.
Okay. Fun little bonus.
Big game tonight. Show. Grizzlies Warriors.
Oh,
Grizzlies Warriors. That sounds like a good game. You want to make a pick on that one, Gerard?
Of course.
Grizzlies, yeah. He loves the Grizzlies.
All right. You guys are back on Friday. Thank you for joining us on the Special Tuesday show. I guess go Grizzlies.
Go Knowles. Big game against Miami tonight.
Oh, yeah. A lot of good games tonight.
Yeah, be
Thank you,
safe.
Judy. Thank you, Gerard.